Hey everybody, today's date is Sunday, December 15th, 2024. Oops, we're gonna run that back. All right, now we're live on both platforms. Hey everybody, this is Marlena here for a brief Marlena moment and community chat number 3. Today's date is Sunday, December 15th, 2024, and I apologize, I went live on my YouTube channel and didn't hit the button for Instagram, but I know so many of you, we have connected because you've been on Instagram and you saw a post about me and my story, my family court story. I'm being punished for protecting, illegally arrested and jailed for 2 weeks. For literally complying with the orders of the state of Texas and Oklahoma that we have a duty to protect our children. And so to those of you that, again, I may not have gotten a chance to connect with personally, may not personally know yet, thank you for continuing to show up, right? A couple of you that I see now trying to wave. And to those of you that, of course, have been around for the long haul, I see a couple of you on Instagram, a couple of you on my YouTube channel. I just dropped that in the comments right before I went live. And so I will say I am humbled by the number of people that are now reaching out, not only just to show their support, but also now asking me to do interviews and speak on behalf of these issues on their channels and platforms and podcasts and different, spaces that they have on social media, where we all have the opportunity to be able to use our voices, right? To share a story that may be our story, maybe others' story, may, like mine, be a shared story, and really impact the masses for good. And we don't have to wait for, the vetting and approval of some higher body and authority that oftentimes, unfortunately, when we are dealing with matters of injustice, aren't going to necessarily produce that story fully and totally truthfully anyways. Because let's just face it, right? There are risks to telling the truth about people that have lots of money, that have lots of power, right? That have lots of ability to retaliate when they are working and paying to keep the truth concealed. And then all of a sudden, a mainstream media station or even social media, it's getting out. And so with that said, I definitely, like I said, humbled by all of it. I'm doing my best to respond as much as I can, but I want to also ask everyone to remember that I am still in active litigation for my baby girl to get her safer, get her safe. I may not even say safer, get her safe, regardless of the gaslighting and the narratives that others may project domestically and systemically that she is safe right now. She is not. I said what I said. I'm not going to stop saying it. I'm going to remain, again, legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate. Sorry for the Instagram world, you didn't see my hand over there. Legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate. And actually in this particular community chat, I'm going to explain what does that mean when I say that, right? But as I'm going to remain legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate, what that also means is that I don't want to be antagonistic, right, in my approach. And this is, again, me passing no judgment on the mood, matter, tone, and way that anyone feels that they need to incorporate professional PR or social media, right? They're basically the same thing, right? One is being done by professionals, one is being done by the individuals oftentimes that are in situations personally. And I am not here to teach a class or pass judgment, sit high and look low on how anybody plays that out on social media or any other platform. What I'm going to do is talk about how I do what I do, why I do what I do, the way that I do it, and how I also believe that I have not been gagged. My case has not been sealed. And I believe those dynamics are occurring for a couple of reasons. One, that I'm not even going to say publicly, but two, I think it's because when I say legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate, This is hard. Anyone that doesn't want the truth getting out about what our children are going through, meaning any neglect, any abuse, any family violence exposure, which most states now determine after a good 4 years of study is actual child abuse. If they are witnessing domestic violence going on between parents, right, it is child abuse. The trauma that children are going through, that their brains are literally experiencing, is the equivalent to what soldiers in warfare, okay, military are experience. It has the same effect on their brain. So it absolutely is child abuse. And so in situations where children are the subject of child abuse, child neglect, family violence investigations, meaning someone has made a report, the child has made an outcry. If that is dealing with child protection services, it's named different things in different states, CYS in Pennsylvania, CPS in Texas, right? DHS, maybe as it's more referred to in Oklahoma, but ultimately your state's form of child protection services. Those proceedings, for the most part, are the most prohibitive and restrictive and confidential, where they don't want information getting out, because it is directly dealing with what happened to a child. And sometimes that includes what many of us feel like is the most heinous, which is CSA, of, an intimate nature. And obviously, we want to be protective of children and not broadcasting the same way that adult survivors of SA would not want their faces plastered with that story and telling everyone that happened to them. To a certain extent, I think we want to do our best to protect children from that same disclosure, because they're still under 18. They don't even have the ability to consent and say, yes, I want to be known for or have the story told of being violated in the most personal, intimate way. And so on some levels and degrees, I agree that these things should remain secret and silent, and private. On the other end, when it has happened, meaning the child has disclosed, meaning there's medical records, there are other forms of corroboration that it has actually occurred, but yet we have professionals, again, here's my air quotes if you happen to be listening, governmental officials that are concealing the evidence that we do know it's happened. In that situation, a lot of times these are the cases that are prompted to, quote unquote, go public, where now people are being forced to yell and scream and shout and say, this is happening to my child, and nobody's listening, and they're concealing it and they're covering it up, which, by the way, when that occurs, I don't care what state you're in, it's criminal to conceal it. So I'm not an attorney. I do not give legal advice, never have, never will. But what I'll say is check your criminal codes in your state. A lot of times when matters are in family court, people will continue to say, oh, it's a private family matter, right? That's how they'll label it. They'll say that it's a family law matter and that judges have this thing called, again, quote unquote, discretion. And they do. Discretion means that they are supposed to be highly vetted, first as lawyers, that then advance to the rank of judge, magistrate, any number of different titles that they have. And that they are supposed to have unbiased, professional, expert abilities to arbitrate the difference between facts, law, and the evidence that gets presented and is admissible in courts of law. They're supposed to be ruling justly, right? And if they do that, then everything should be fine, and they should have discretion to be the one that says, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. I believe the law, yes, supports this, the law doesn't support that. And so in these types of situations, oftentimes when you're hiring attorneys to deal with family law related matters, and family law related matters can be anything that touches that child, the family members of that child, if there are pending divorce or custody proceedings going on where the child is the subject, the child is at issue in terms of what two different individuals or sides, two or more, are fighting for. And so when that is the situation, they will say everything is family law related, but what I'm going to encourage people to do is to check your state's criminal codes. In Texas, I know it's the Texas Penal Code. right? In Oklahoma, I don't know what they necessarily call it, but every state has family or domestic relations laws and codes. Every state is going to have criminal penal codes and laws. And then every state is going to have their own version of Child Protective Service codes and laws. What I want to say is that wherever you are, if you're involved in these matters, if you're supporting someone that is engaged in these matters, you need to study all three. Most of the time, your family law or domestic relations attorneys, they're not getting into that. And part of the reason is there are what we call dependency juvenile courts. That's where they handle CPS matters. There are criminal court system, which is a lot more scripted, quote unquote, accountable, a lot more rigorous deadlines, because now you're talking about the deprivation of rights potentially, and the interruption of people's actual freedom to not be incarcerated or convicted, things of this nature. You have different standards like beyond a reasonable doubt, right? In criminal systems, preponderance of evidence, clear and convincing evidence. You hear these terms. These are three different standards for what people need to be able to provide evidence to prove. And then, of course, you have the family court system. So really what winds up happening in these cases where there's child abuse, neglect, family violence, is you have matters that are either being brought to authorities' attention either through the Child Protection Services arena. Someone has made a report, right? A child has made an outcry, maybe at school, maybe to a doctor, and they're mandated reporters. And so, maybe to a counselor. Boom, that's hitting the Child Protective Services dynamics. And they have a totally different process and means for handling that, what is a lot of times administrative law processes, right? Then it may come to the system's attention through the family court system, which is private civil court, right? These are people that they're fighting for their best interest. Oftentimes in family law, especially if you hear the term high conflict, this is a situation where you do have one party that is legitimately fighting for the protection and the safety of the child, and you have another one that is fighting to maintain abusive power and control, coercive control that they have now lost because a divorce is taking place or a custody matter has been filed. And that is a whole nother different arena where there's all kinds of things that go on that, yes, there are laws that are supposed to be regulating that process, but that is oftentimes in the middle of these systems where things go off the rails and just about anything can happen under the cover of discretion, judicial discretion. Right? Now, this is not me saying that all judges are bad, all judges are corrupt. They're not. We have a lot of great judges. Also, what you have a lot of times, though, is you have different pressures and dynamics and politics and all kinds of stuff that are going on in jurisdictions that sometimes are influencing and even controlling these judges. And sometimes if you look for it, if you're looking for the best in your judges, you can see when they are trying to do the right thing for the child and the party trying to protect the child. And when all of a sudden you walk into court and this hearing feels very differently, and you can tell that they've actually been given instructions, right? Everybody has a superior, everybody has a higher power. And that has happened in my case as well. It's happened in the last 6 months. I fully believe that. And so when that's the case, it's, even though a lot of us would love to salute and expose great judges that are doing the right things, if you have cases that are concealing others' criminality over years, covering up, concealing abuse, neglect, criminal behavior on behalf of some parties against others seeking relief, you can't necessarily wave, use the megaphone to shout out those judges either, because sometimes promoting them for doing the right thing in a system that's wanting them to do the wrong thing can be harmful as well. So that's the family court system, that up is down, left is right, right is wrong, wrong is right, and anything can literally happen and does occur. I think whether you are team protective mom, team safe parent, team father's rights, team whatever, I think everybody has that general agreement that in family courts, it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. And that's just an unfortunate reality. Of course, everything I'm expressing is my opinion, but most people, regardless of what side, extreme or even in between, middle, neutral, reasonable, looks at both sides, unbiased report that you get, they get that in family court, Domestic relations law, literally anything can happen. Money talks. Professional relationships talk. A lot of times, everything besides facts and law and evidence talks and has the louder voice in the family law arena. And then, of course, again, you've got the criminal system. Sometimes you have things like enforcement actions, contempt of court, those are civil. And then you have these laws, like, for instance, I'll use Texas because that's where my matter is out of, that they now kind of cross into a quasi-criminal system. And now they're claiming, arising out of civil court orders, someone has committed something called interference with child custody, which actually exists in the Texas Penal Code as an actual crime, even though the ability for it to even be a crime comes out of the civil code here in the middle, right? Which is a civil court order that says it is a crime against the family. If you have a civil court order to turn a child over and you are not turning that child over, you're committing a crime, right? And so that is profusely being spread and advanced privately and publicly, especially out of the state of Texas. A version of this occurs in other states. Sometimes when you have domestic violence victims that may flee, and yes, there are lawful provisions for fleeing domestic violence, child protection, child abuse. Again, check your state's laws. Every state is different about what you must do when you get to the refuge state, right? Those things exist. But, I know in Oklahoma, there's a big case a lot of people have been following for a couple of years where an actual child protection worker employed by the state's child protection system was victim of domestic violence, was protecting her child after a forensic interview, went into another state, was pulled out of a domestic violence shelter, arrested, and her charge is child stealing, is what they call it. Not kidnapping necessarily because it is her child, but they call it child stealing in Oklahoma. And so you're going to have various different variations where now what was civil starts going into a criminal system. And now it's, multifaceted, where you may need to have criminal attorneys as well as family law and domestic relations attorneys. If you can find the best that are well trained and seasoned in both family and criminal law, with also an awareness of the dynamics of the child protection services, it's even better. But y'all, they're going to be more expensive because of, I think, the sheer stress level. The stress level of, oh my gosh, these are highly contentious. People are literally fighting for their lives, for their children, for their money, quite frankly, for their reputations. And, in my professional work, self-employed work as an independent associate, I actually help people have access to attorneys. And they even say, right, practicing in all areas of law, that family law is the most contentious, stressful, risky, high conflict, and even dangerous type of law out there, because you are dealing with people's very life and death. And so, of course, if you get an attorney that is actually seasoned and understands all three bodies of law with proficiency, right, they're obviously going to be the most expensive, right, because they're going to give the greatest value. So you're talking about anywhere from $350, $450, $550, and up and up and up that these attorneys are going to charge. Most people are not making that at their jobs, in their business, or whatever their line of work is. And so obviously it comes at great financial costs. A lot of times to even retain these types of attorneys. If you have a matter that's been going on for years, it has multiple judges, multiple jurisdictions, multiple dynamics involving all three, and is extremely complex, they call it. A lot of times to retain an attorney that can even navigate all of that, understand it first, and then take it on, not be completely and totally, utterly overwhelmed. And then 3, not be worried about their license, right? Not be worried that if they come in and they assertively represent that client, and that means sometimes having to correct and steer the court to say, hey, let's get on track here. This is actually not high conflict. It's not complicated. We need to do the right thing. There's consequences for attorneys that do that, right? And so let's say you find someone like that. They're not even thinking about touching your case without a $10,000 to $15,000 retainer, right? Because they already know, just to get caught up on the case history, to find out what are all the facts, laws, issues, that it's going to take them the better part of $10,000 to $15,000 just to do that, and you may not even get to your first hearing, even if it's within 2 weeks. And that happens to be my case. I've talked to a lot of ridiculously impressive attorneys that, yes, they are seasoned. Some of them, they've been former prosecutors, so they know when things cross over into child stealing or interference with child custody, they know how the prosecutors are doing that, so they know how to defend it. But if you actually get a 3-in-1, you're paying massive premium for them. And hopefully you can hang on. Otherwise, at some point in time in that case, it may be the most critical parts. It might be when you're getting ready to go to final trial. Then yes, they have the right to withdraw and you lose them to now try to deal with a full-blown trial. Maybe it's a bench trial, maybe it's a jury trial all by yourself. So when people say you need to get an attorney, right? Police say, oh, sorry, we can't help you. You need to get an attorney. CPS say, sorry, ma'am, we can't help you. You need to get an attorney. Because we all know there's not a row in all of our jurisdictions called free attorney row where you just go and pick one up like people are picking up Christmas trees right now. If that can't happen, then you're in the situation where you still, though without a license, have to engage, have to participate pro se in just about 49 states. In California, they call it in pro per. That means self-represented. That means you're your own attorney. Now, a lot of people say that's foolish, right? The man that represents himself is a fool. But I would have to remind people that in any matter, 2 attorneys walk in. At the end of it, typically, one attorney is going to walk out, if not both of them, not getting everything that they wanted, or one is going to get everything that they want, which happens a lot in family court, and the other one's going to get nothing. And so all I can say is hiring attorneys is not foolproof either, right? For attorneys, it's a job. You are one of many cases. Most are not going to sacrifice their profession, their careers that they went to school, they spent lots of money, they're still in debt trying to pay off, they worked hard, they love doing, they need to do to take care of their own family, maintain their own lifestyle. Most of them are not risking their entire livelihood for themselves and their family for your one case because you need someone to care. I think there's many that would love to, but they also understand the dynamics that they're dealing with to be able to play nice with their colleagues, honestly, as officers of the court, right? That if they get a certain look from a judge, they get a certain private conference with the judge that says, counselors, here's what we're going to do here. Most of them have to go with the flow, bow down, go along to get along, whatever you want to call it, because it's not life and death for them personally. It's their job. Now, some people say that makes them ridiculously corrupt and evil. Look, in every phase and stage of trauma and terror, when you're going through this, I think we all go from extreme to extreme on they're all evil, they're all corrupt, they're all in it together, to recognizing what's actually really happening. The similar dynamic occurs in law enforcement systems where you have good law enforcement officers. For those of you that have seen the Easter Sunday video, when my daughter's father was ordered 5 days prior to turn my daughter over, and he did not, and we had to go from the Midway law enforcement police department that I showed up on time and Dad did not, to his jurisdiction to say, hey, we want to lay eyes on her, make sure she's safe. And him and that officer talked about everything from an Our Family Wizard app that's not even our court orders to, oh, I'm just trying to learn, the cop literally poking fun at me and saying, I'm not going to enforce the law for you. But of course, this being the same department that when I was actually complying with child protection services, family law, and penal criminal code laws to protect my daughter, put me in jail for interference, which, by the way, if there is legitimate concerns for the health, safety, welfare of a child, abuse, neglect, you cannot fail to remove them or return to them environments where that's going on. And at least neglect or abuse was already credible and determined without a forensic interview due to medical records, medications that my daughter was on, x-rays that had been done without a forensic interview. So that is already a proven fact. They may be trying to ignore it, conceal it, pretend like they didn't know it existed. They don't care. We just don't believe her. So we're not going to do legit police work. We're just going to say we think she's lying, and so we're just not going to acknowledge it. We're not going to protect the child, and by the way, we're going to blame the mom that it happened. Those are the dynamics in my case, and I think that's also why it raised the outcry that it did, because it's like, what is happening here? This mom literally was crying on a Zoom about how even when the child protests, she makes her go to comply with court orders, And then after 2 hours of leaving her in the custody, care, and control, 2 months of leaving her in the custody, care, and control as ordered with her father, paternal side, school, law enforcement, CPS in that jurisdiction with a duty to protect her, even some medical professionals. She winds up in a worse situation where mom has to step in. I mean, the facts are the facts, right? Those are not things that are allegations when there's actual medical records and, medication, steroids, antibiotics flying, not making that up, not coaching that, not alienating that, right? It's silly, but that's the abuser playbook. They have to do that. And so anyways, my point was there are many in law enforcement that I have found literally coast to coast where they want to do the right thing. That Easter Sunday video, there was a female officer that, don't you know, she actually read the court orders, right? And I actually got the official body cams on that. We were all also recording. There was about 4 of us, me, court ordered supervisor just for 3 visits because they had actually interfered with my parent-child relationship with my daughter for over 8 years, and the judge was restoring that. And so it was a supervisor just for 3 visits because this judge was like, oh my God, do I give this child back to mom? And literally they've had 2 minutes together in 8 years. And apparently there's a video where dad is assaulting the mother on camera in front of the child. The child is screaming out, like, does she even know her mom? Is it going to be okay? So he said, okay, fine. The first 3 visits, 3 weekends in a row. Let's get this going, dad. Yes, she needs to have a supervisor. So we had the supervisor and then 2 of her brothers. All 4 of us were there. So again, there was a lot of recording independently. And then we did get the official body cam and dash cam for another conversation that I didn't know was going on with that officer and her father. Very cozy. Also corroborating a lot of what my daughter said about how, in her opinion, that police department is dad's friends. They pull him over, they let him go, which again, you can imagine is very dangerous for a child if they are sharing that kind of information and then body cam confirms it, like that dash cam conversation did, right? Where at the end of this normal call, the officer says, hey, I think I'm going to come see you at your job. So if there's dynamics like that, when I say that my daughter is not safe, I don't know whose children would be safe when there's that kind of bias going on in a jurisdiction and a child is screaming, I'm hurt, help me, different things are going on. And they're like, oh, no, there's nothing to see. There's nothing going on. The child is fine. Everything's safe. Everything's good. You know, the 30-year criminal record that you have possession of and we as a law enforcement agency have possession of, it doesn't exist. Y'all have to laugh so I don't cry or catch a legit case. But this is the kind of things that we're dealing with in our particular CPS, criminal, custody, family law matter. Whew, let me take a break. So what does that mean? It goes back to you and me. And so I'm doing these community chats because you all showed up powerfully for me when they silenced me, when I couldn't speak. They tried in the TRO hearing to say that it was my fault. That from jail, right? Somehow I've been fighting for 11 plus years, fighting to freedom for me and my children. But somehow when I was in jail and had the least power I've ever had, I was able to get a national organization that has helped to pass federal laws to try to get the public to now, quote unquote, harass a judge, which of course that judge has not complained about harassment. And by the way, people got notices back from that judge's email at her law firm because she is both a judge and has a law firm. I didn't know that, by the way, on the inside, but I'm sure I orchestrated it. People got autoresponder messages that said, hey, I'm out. So she's not being harassed at all. She signed my arrest warrant, I guess, went on vacation or something. I don't know. But anyways, of course, they have to make these claims of alert, alert, we're a victim, everyone's a victim. Now we're not safe because the public is talking and no one has gone anywhere near my daughter, her father's home. I don't even mention his name because quite frankly, with all of the time and everything that he has stolen from all of our lives, he doesn't even deserve me disclosing his name. Now, could people find his name? Sure. If they want to do their own research, absolutely. I have also said, and I will say again, I do not want anyone anywhere near my daughter's home with her father or any paternal family members. I don't want anyone near her school. I am not asking for that. So if you're wondering, maybe we should all show up and do that. By the way, most of you that are listening to me, you are also safe and appropriate, legal and lawful. So I don't even really need to say that to y'all, and I appreciate that. There are some of these cases that have gone off the Richter scale. There was a dad in our jurisdiction back in 2021 that was asking people to show up on his property at judges' houses with guns and all kinds of stuff. Wow. I would never ask, condone, or be okay with anything like that being done on behalf of Marlena and for her children. We don't roll like that. We do stay legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate. And I certainly don't want to bring dynamics of a bunch of strangers into private interaction with my daughter. I wouldn't do that. But again, there's a father that did. That case went internationally viral. And so, now, laws changed. There's a standing order in our county now of call-in that says don't post medical records because things went off the Richter scale in that case. And so when I say safe, legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate, what I mean is even though abusers of power don't really want the truth getting out that they've been paying and partnering to conceal, I think most jurisdictions, I'll speak to mine in North Texas, we've actually had judges advance to justice out of the courts that were involved in our matter that have actually spoken to bar associations and said gag orders on family law cases, in her belief as a Harvard and Stanford law graduate, are unconstitutional. Again, we had another dad, unlike the first, that raised like $400,000 on GoFundMe. Just putting all kinds of stuff out there, video of the child, all kinds of different dynamics. We had another father out of neighboring Dallas jurisdiction that was able to start doing a blog and posting about his custody case. And he actually got the public responses from Attorney General and Governor of the state of Texas, right? And so clearly, and I think this father was able to raise about $143,000 for his fight. And now I hear has a good shot at getting into Congress in some shape, form, or degree. I don't know if that's a House of Representatives member. Again, you can Google that story. But, there are a lot of people that have done a lot of different things with their custody cases. And because public officials, they know also that courts are to be open, they don't like that kind of oversight, attention, energy of the public filling their emails, calling their phone, shutting down their phone lines. They don't really care a lot when there are things being concealed for the fourth branch of government, which is you and me, the people, to be checking up on them. They don't like that. And while they know that it is legal and lawful, I believe if done in a mood, matter, and tone that keeps things calm and reasonable, they let us do it. They're not trying to then get into another body of law, which would be constitutional law, and now violating constitutional rights. And so I haven't had that happen to me. I believe part of it is because in that jurisdiction, there are many that have been involved in my case that I believe understand that I have a right to speak about my experiences. I'm not being irresponsible. I'm not calling for criminal things to take place. I speak out against doxing. I've joined other people's justice fights. And if those family members were engaging in any form of doxing, letting people know where the other party was, I even told them, hey, I'm here to support you, but it's wrong. Don't do it, especially if children are involved. If there are gag orders on other cases that I've been aware of, and involved in and asked to be interviewed, I don't go outside of the realm of violating those gag orders, right? Because for the most part, which is why it was so crazy that I was arrested, not really the most part, but fully and totally, I am committed to actually being law-abiding, even if and when law enforcement, child protective services, attorneys, and all of those that are very seasoned with the laws that they are intentionally, knowingly breaking, even if they are doing the wrong thing. I don't say, okay, fine, you're in the ditch and you're playing dirty, so I'm going to get down there with you and do the same. Why? Because mainly for me, the core of my spiritual belief is that there's a God in heaven watching all of this, and I still believe he is in full and total control. That has never changed in 11 years. It will never change. It is a part of the core of who I am, how I was raised, what I believe, what I've had to hold on to when it was just me and God leading and guiding me throughout this country and this nation from coast to coast, because yes, at some point I was forced to flee and live underground. My faith is solid. The world didn't give it to me, so they can't take it away. So there is nothing that is going to make me ever abandon the core belief that I have inside that, Marlena, if you start telling lies and you start breaking laws, man's law or God's law, that he's got to sort you out too. I believe he's no respecter of person, right? And so that's why I do what I do, regardless of what everybody around me is doing, right? They can be more seasoned, more professional, more knowledgeable. They may practice it every day. And where things become criminal is when you talk about the mindset. Is it intentional and knowing, right? Professionals obviously know when they are committing crimes of commission and omission. We may not always know, but again, when you're forced to spend your life underground for 6 years, you got a lot of time to study a lot of laws and learn a lot of things. And so even though I still don't know all the rules of evidence, right? The Civil Practice and Remedies Code, all of the various different dynamics that are on top of those three major bodies that I talked to you about. And now how do you even practice and get your evidence admitted? How do you keep things that shouldn't be placed on the record out of the record when they show up in court and try to do it? Well, it takes us 10, 20, 100 times more to study and learn and keep up and navigate a process that we don't engage in everyday professional. So is exhausting for us, not only because it's personal, but because it is professional, right? And there are rules to the game and the laws, the rules of engagement. Well, it takes us so much more. If I even become aware that something exists, and Marlena, you might step out of bounds, they know I do not intentionally and knowingly break any laws. And they also know when I am lawfully and legally protecting my children, that I'm actually not violating custody court orders, if and when those situations arise that take precedence over what did the custody order say from the last hearing. Again, I am not giving legal advice. What I'm trying to encourage someone to do today is to trust yourself that yes, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take loss of income, because while you're having to be a full-time attorney, guess what you're not doing? Whatever you were doing before to earn money. Right? So it puts you in a disadvantaged financial position if you weren't already there as a result of the relationship that you got out of. Imagine that. It's going to continue to rage on powerfully, detrimentally, tragically. But if you're fighting for your life and the life of your children, I'm hoping that I'm convincing and encouraging someone to do it anyways. Educate yourself. Everything is not so legalese that it's hard to understand, and without an attorney to interpret it, we're just a bunch of dummies and we don't know what we're talking about. That is not the case, right? Another reason why I think my case went live is when people looked at that arrest warrant that was shared with them, and it said to any law officer in the state of Texas, if she's found in your Texas county, bring her to the municipal court magistrate. I think a lot of people without an attorney were asking, how did that transfer to some county in Oklahoma, which is not her being found in a Texas county if she's all the way in her home state of Oklahoma. And again, all the way, we're talking about 1 hour and 45 minutes, y'all. So we're not talking about me fleeing, which they tried to allege. Thankfully, this judge didn't give any credibility to she's a flight risk. No, I'm not. That is their narrative they're continuing to try to paint, because it's part of the abuser's playbook to be able to get supervised visits, to be able to destroy the relationship in what we now call CAMS, child and mother sabotage. And again, it is part of them continuing to go along with concepts like alienation, and we just have to cut off all contact. We need to psychologically evaluate. The child is in grave danger. It is par for the course, right? It is literally a playbook where they're checking off boxes of everything else has failed. Now we got to start throwing stuff against the wall and see how it sticks. It's amusing. But thankfully, again, another reason why I'm not constantly on here berating judges is that not saying everything went in my favor, not even saying everything went fully and totally the way that many attorneys would agree with me it should. I'm saying thankfully, at least there was enough there was a judge that was presiding over the TRO that didn't end up committed to a particular agenda and predetermined ruling, as has happened over the past 11 years with both of my children, my son and my daughter. That was able to listen to us both and to realize, wait a minute, even though they're alleging the mom doesn't return the child, she just mentioned something about driving from Oklahoma every day from mid-April, when she got a TRO that then turned into a criminal protective order that 3 judges heard all of her pleadings and signed off on, until August 12th. And wait a minute, she got this child living in Oklahoma through the 4th grade in Texas, driving 2 hours one way every single morning. And they're saying she never returns her, but that either did or didn't happen. And it does seem like this child is in the 5th grade. So obviously mom can't be lying, right? If you stick and stay in the process, things like that can come out, that these are literal, obvious, false allegations and attempts to mischaracterize and paint the mother as some dangerous criminal that's going to take off and somehow get on the tarmac and wind up in another country with the child. But yet she was driving a total of 4 hours every day from April to mid-May to get this child to finish their 4th grade year. But we just don't ever know if we let the mom take the child, like when we're going to see her again. Okay, sorry. I'm starting to have fun. You got to have fun. I laugh a lot. I'm silly. Generally, naturally, I'm silly. And I have to stay that way, even as I'm fighting these matters. Otherwise, I would literally go crazy and actually need an evaluation, which again, I don't think most people believe, right? I think most people understand she's having perfectly normal responses to perfectly abnormal things, that if any neighborhood anywhere in the country abuse, neglect, and harm was happening to someone's family member, and they shouted out in the middle of the street, help! And they called 911 and said, help! And they called CPS and said, hello, we got a child in danger here. We understand we're supposed to report. Whatever response the public would have that's not in family law matters, when she has that same response that there is a grave injustice, a child in danger, I need somebody to care and do something, that does not make her crazy. That makes her what we actually would call a good, safe mom or a good, safe parent, just like so many of you, right? And so there's certain situations where speaking out publicly, explaining these things, talking about these things, being transparent, being authentic as to your mental state, on your good days, on your bad days, on your in-between days, on your I can't even stand right now, and I'm laughing my tail off all day and doing nothing beneficial because mentally and emotionally I'm warped days. I think it's actually worked for me that I'm having these conversations out loud. Because again, I think if they get their paid psychiatrist to come in and say I'm crazy, I think everybody is going to see another red flag that we don't need to be attorneys to figure out, as alienation is the only disease diagnosed by lawyers. They would say she's not crazy. She's dealing with crazy making behavior. And the fact that for some reason, we can't fully and totally lawfully protect a parent-child relationship. We can't, for some reason, have the moral will, courage, and law-abiding professionalism, governmental or otherwise, to abide by the law and protect a child and protect a woman who decided over 11 years ago, unfortunately, right after the abuse dynamic started in me getting pregnant, I'm done. I'm walking away. Thank you. I don't want to play anymore. Yes, you're having a child. I will not keep her from you. I never tried to, but as far as you and me, our relationship is over. And again, as many of you know, some people handle that better than others. Some, the fact that you walked away from them, that you set up boundaries and you said, I'm good. Find somebody else. They will never let you get past that. And they will continue to keep coming for you and coming for you and coming for you until they destroy you, erase you, and take you out. And yes, that's the dynamics of my case as well, where I had a man that literally, him and his mother told my daughter, while I was being unlawfully and unjustly kept out of her life for 8 years, to not subject myself to illegal and unlawful arrest. And again, I said what I said then, I'll say it now, those are still the facts. People can manipulate them and say whatever they want to. That's their jam, right? It's fraud, perjury, manipulation, false allegations, not mine. The truth is the truth. And so as they unjustly, illegally, and unlawfully kept our parent-child relationship from existing for more than 2 minutes in 8 years, yes, him and his mother told her, your mom's a kidnapper, she's in jail. And they eventually, when she wouldn't stop asking for me, told her I was dead. Forget about her. She doesn't exist. Dad's constantly bringing new women into the situation. She's your mom. Your biological mom that you remember, that's attached to your brother, that's still coming around. Forget about her. She's dead. That's what they told her. He actually filed an affidavit with the courts, because you can't just change a child's name without the other parent's knowledge if they still have rights. He told the courts, oh, last time I saw her was in a courtroom, March 18th, 2016, never heard from her. And we're emailing that week. and had been emailing since March of 2016. But again, because he's been allowed to get away with it, he can continue to file perjured documents and somehow, air quotes, I'm not getting into it, continue to be granted the ability to proceed in the family courts with the full custody, care, and control over not only my daughter and our daughter, I should say, but also over me as an independent, whole, single, not married, and not born with a remote to be controlled woman. So with all that said, I don't want to go longer than an hour anytime I go live, unless I do something special, which I am actually wanting to talk to y'all a little bit about that. What I'm asking for right now is a team of 12 people. First team of 12 people that I'm asking for you to reach out if you think that this might be you is kind of more of what I'm going to call my inner circle, if you will. There are things that I need to be able to communicate, that I have a right to communicate, that I cannot communicate publicly. Some have said that there's going to be some announcements that I'm going to make, and so I'm going to go ahead and give that right now. One of those announcements is that, yes, I have seen the alleged forensic interview, and police and CPS notations on how they got to do and orchestrate what they got to do in witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and official oppression. I've seen it. Honestly, y'all, I didn't read it in the courtroom. We had 20 minutes aside, didn't have time. It looked like a legitimate thing. This looks like the police department that I'm dealing with. So, we'd like to enter it as evidence. I mean, fine, I'd love to see it because they didn't give it to me outside of proceedings. And then otherwise you got to wait for discovery and try to compel it. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to object. And so I didn't get to read it in the courtroom. I didn't get to read it the next day because the next day, if y'all remember, literally that night I passed out, woke up at 1:30 in the morning. And then the next day you're just kind of in a haze, right? And so right before I went live Friday night, I actually read it and I realized that, oops, accidentally, air quotes, somebody forgot to flip the switch, right, to record the forensic interview. Y'all, if you've ever had to take children to a forensic interview, or if you have to take a child to a forensic interview, they are done at what they call child advocacy centers. They are done, supposed to be with multidisciplinary teams. That means there should be a member of Child Protective Services that's highly trained on how to not lead children, but to allow them to disclose or not, right, to get clarity on things that they're saying. There typically is members of law enforcement that are there because there are simultaneous investigations going on, child protection investigations, as well as criminal investigations. Oftentimes, you're going to have other people that are watching that interview at the same time. They might say to the interviewer, hey, can you ask the child about this or get clarity about this? So the goal is the child is in a more comfortable environment. Sometimes they look like homes, so they're not scary like them sitting in a cold, stale police department, which I'm glad they have these for children. And also, like two-way mirrors, or they have a way that it's being monitored and videoed, which also makes it interesting. How is law enforcement supposedly watching it if it wasn't being recorded? Because it's a different room and they didn't have a two-way mirror. I'm not getting into all that, but they allege, quote unquote, oops, there's a technological error, but then it mentioned something about somebody not flipping a switch. Like we did this whole interview where she actually disclosed a lot, right? The one thing that would have been going overboard on one of the allegations that was made by an Oklahoma state employed contracted counselor, that would have been overboard probably for CSA. Oh, she didn't say that, right? But of course it wasn't recorded. So why should we believe you either? Y'all, this is the kind of stuff we deal with. They did not forget or have a technological malfunction in my daughter's interview, but they brought her in to arrest me and witness tamper and get me out of the equation and then say whatever they're going to say in their report, which still is bad because she's still disclosed and she's still not protected and nobody still cares. And so that said, there is I'm going to say between that and something that I have to do for my son that I lost in April over the next few days, I'm going to ask for 12 people to be willing to join me as a part of Inner Circle, where I can share more details that everyone will agree and promise they are not sharing publicly, right? That they are not sharing now or at another time, because another argument that she made in court. Dad's counsel is for the judge to review some report in camera. From what I'm understanding, it's something different that I haven't even seen. And apparently there's a law in Texas where if we're pro se, we can't see it because some act inappropriately and plaster it all over the internet. Look, in Texas, CPS law with recordings, yes, you can record, but there is their policy, I guess, that says you can't post anything to a public website in a way that a CPS worker can be identified, right? And so because those are those dynamics, when I'm saying legal, lawful, safe, and appropriate, I'm talking about things like that, where they know I will abide by that if I'm aware. I'm not going to ask anybody to violate that. I'm not going to condone anybody violating it. They also know I can't control the internet, but I'm saying if you happen to get in touch with me and say, I want to be one of the 12, I will honor the way that you fight, Marlena, which is with as clean hands as you absolutely possibly can, abiding by all known laws, rules, restrictions, policies, procedures, regardless of the fact that you're fighting people that aren't abiding by any of that. If you think you're one of the 12, there are some things that I'm happy to share with you all, just so you can confirm that the needs are legitimate, about what it can do. This current need has multi-purposes that I'll just say is needed yesterday, but I haven't even had the capacity and the energy to ask anybody to help with it, because when you're dealing with these things and they're personal, they're traumatic, they're traumatizing. Honestly, yesterday, what did I do yesterday? Absolutely, completely nothing that had to deal with giving, pouring out, interacting with others. Y'all, I rested. My body, my mind, my heart is tired and weary. And so for our mental health, for our physical health, for the well-being of our children, that if we are a wreck, we can't do anything for, right? My daughter, or the fact that I have other children as well, right? I have a 20-year-old son that, I'm in contact with on a regular basis, and he still has, Mom, can you help with, right? So I got to make sure that I take care of me so that I can take care of them. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart, right? And there is no point to any of this fight anyways. But all of that said, to those 12 people right now, I would ask that they can either help donate and or raise about $100 to $200 immediately for a time-sensitive need that needs to occur yesterday for something that I need to get done no later than Tuesday. And so if you're one of those 12 that's willing to either give and or help raise it, again, just asking each of you to only do 100 to 200 personally or through others. I am willing to share more information with you all just to, again, confirm the need and understand a little bit more of where this goes. Please contact me. What I am also willing to do for those that would step into that role to help is, I understand there's a lot of other dynamics that people are asking for, a lot of other different conversations, discussions, even just information that is needed, things that I can't necessarily share publicly. For those that are willing to join that fundraising team or that giving team to help accomplish those goals, then I've got some other things that I want to be able to do with those 12 people. Again, legally, lawfully, safely, and appropriately, that also would be designed to help assist in any particular dynamics that you may be dealing with as well. At best, definitely it's not going to be legal advice. I want to make that crystal clear. I'm definitely not encouraging anybody to run or do anything that I would not say publicly. But there's a lot of dynamics that, again, understanding all of the different bodies of law, all of the different dynamics, it's valuable. Right? We have coaches that are high conflict coaches now. We have coaches that are divorce coaches. We have coaches that are pro se coaches now. And so it's more along the lines of those types of services, which again, I've done for mothers and fathers and grandparents and families for over 10 years now, while I've been simultaneously dealing with my own cases. And so it's more along the lines of that, as well as those that have asked me to also do some speaking. What is the bottom line? I have to manage the time and money dynamic just like anybody else. And so I do have that immediate need that hopefully can even be addressed today so that I can get done some pretty major things that need to be done no later than Tuesday. We're going into the holidays, and if her father was to return her 5 days after the judge ordered him to back in March, even though I'm supposed to have her on the 21st, the 22nd, and on Christmas, I really don't have a whole lot of confidence that he's actually going to turn her over. And I will just say that on Friday, when school is out, she doesn't have to show back up to a particular location, school, until January 6th. And so for those of you that know that I have continued to remain truthful, maybe you found out about me through trusted networks that vetted my story and they've seen evidence and they know everything that I've said is truthful. I'm going to ask you to use discernment and read between the lines of why this is an urgent request and need. And I do need some people to step forward yesterday to assist with that. For everyone else, support is not always financial. Support is just, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm with you. You're not alone. Prayers, sharing, posting, commenting, liking, subscribing, all of that stuff. I thank all of you for all of that. Every aspect of support in whatever form it comes, all of it is valuable. All of it means the world to me. And I thank you all so much for each and every part of it. I need y'all to know that. I've been in my battle for 11 plus years. And I know there's also a lot of you out there that are probably thinking, man, if I can get the attention on my case that she has on hers, I get it. Because honestly, that was me all the way from November 2013 up until they decided to pull this little witness tampering act, November 2024. That's 11 years, y'all. Yes, I was forced to be absent from my life as a normal person for 6 years behind these types of dynamics, corruption and collusion. And so that's not me saying that you haven't gone through enough yet. That's not me saying that you need to go through everything I've gone through to get it. Look, I didn't even know that the outcry was going to happen to the extent, the degree that it did. Again, I'm thankful for all of you as individuals and organizations that led that when, again, I couldn't speak. I was silenced. I was in jail, right? There just wasn't a lot of power of anything that I could do besides speak truth. And yes, gratefully receive and appreciate the help that was occurring on the outside. And I do believe that that meant everything in the world. There's a level of transparency that comes when that occurs, and I'm thankful. And so for everyone else that, again, the organizations even that have helped me, NSPO, OMB, two of the largest, huge organizations that, of course, most of you have probably come to finding out my story about and hearing about. They wouldn't have the bandwidth, the manpower, the time, the capacity to vet stories, to continue to share stories. And at the end of the day, they probably wouldn't be able to do much else of the other functions that they do. One is very much focused on legislative advocacy, NSPO, and educating the public about different dynamics that are going on. OMB, like, they educate professionals, right? They send packets to educate your judge, educate your professionals, right? They are doing a judicial wall of shame right now for all of these judges that are ordering children into reunification therapy, right? They are starting to share, yes, my family court story. Most of these are veiled to protect the identity of the person that's sharing their story. But again, I know that's also limited because there's so many of us out there. And I know they can't get to everybody, even if they wanted to, but they have chapters in every state. Check those out, right? You could join those chapters. They have a Court Watch chapter, which, again, you've seen my Court Watch posts. NSPO has also done posts for me, and other individuals have shared those posts. Again, thank you so much. There are other communities and other ways that, yes, if we can support organizations like these, that I believe they can continue to further the objectives, the needs of all of us. For me, I'm going to engage in community chats more and more, whether people are donating or not. And I'm working on trying to figure out a process for how I can even get people signed up to join the conversation, right? Like, I know on YouTube, I think you can have, I don't know, let's just say maybe 6 people that can be on screen with you to talk about various different issues. And if it's just talking about the issues, obviously we're going to continue to stay mindful to keep, all of us out of the realm of legitimate threats of any kind of defamation, slander, violation of gag orders. I'm gonna, definitely want all of those dynamics to be in place and for us to be responsible with it. But I've realized that just the ability to talk and to be heard, to be seen, the power of someone sharing a post and saying, hey, yes, I got a GoFundMe out there. I've got a deadline. There's a mom that contacted me this morning that apparently is risking jail. She can't pay $500 for a garden ad litem fee tomorrow, right? I believe that there's other ways that we can organize, and we can organize ourselves to be able to try to step up and come alongside and assist people in other ways. And what I'm saying is I'm committed to try to figure that out. I don't have all the answers. I am still just a mom, just like so many of you, that is doing my best to navigate through the impossible. My child is not safe right now. And again, I said what I said, and I did not stutter. I will say it again, and I will keep saying it, quite frankly, until she's back safe with me, like she was from mid-April to mid-August. That is the bottom line. I appreciate the confidence that so many of you have in me. I appreciate how many of you have said my ability to articulate these dynamics is helpful. And so if those are ways that I'm encouraging and uplifting and supporting others, then I want to continue to remain present to do that, and even help to, get some other stories out there, right? And so I don't feel like I'm anyone special that's able to do that. Do I believe that God has even called me to do some of this work? Of course. And so I'm going to continue to navigate and do the best that I can to do as much of that as I can, and make sense, and also does not put tremendous risk on my personal active litigation case and my daughter, because she's priority. Just like in your cases, your children, yourself, you should be priority, right? Anybody would expect that. There's a balance of us being in apathy and sitting back and doing absolutely nothing, privately or publicly, for people that are crying out and screaming out and saying, somebody listen, somebody cares, somebody help. And again, as I started talking about on Friday, hey, are you part of team apathy? Are you part of team tenacity, team integrity, team transparency, team accountability, right? Team support and team community that says, we're not going to say that we're so passionate about all these issues that involve life and liberty and pursuit of happiness and other rights that we believe that we want others to have, while we continue to ignore a group of people that are literally screaming at the top of their lungs until they have no voice left and possibly no life left in them, right? I want to stand up for that group of people. I will say, just because it's what I provide, I'm going to request the same thing. Any stories that I happen to, possibly share, put out there, invite into my platform and have conversations, I give people a lot of evidence. I'm going to need to vet and do the same thing. And that's only because over the past 10 years, I have jumped on board with a lot of cases. And I'm not saying that I ever fully regretted being involved. Again, there was a case for a father and, helping the father and paternal side that still has legitimate issues where the system wasn't doing right by the children either. And I'm not saying anything else about that, but I wasn't wrong to get involved in that case. However, the claims that she's just keeping my kid from me, I'll just say it wasn't accurate. There was other things going on. I can't also give a complete I'm going to stop right there for right now, because I didn't get on here to talk about someone else's cases today. But I'll just say, nobody had clean hands in that situation, and I've just seen those go off the rails too many times. There's another situation I got involved in where a man was killed in a jail. Again, was it legitimate that he was killed in the jail and should not have been? Yes. Was it fully and totally the way that all of the people involved were promoting it to the public? When you get a chance to be a part of these cases later on, at some point, you get more records and more information, just like I did in the case of the father, and you realize it is not the way that they are portraying it to the public. And so all I'm saying is that I'm seasoned enough after over a decade of fighting these cases, yes, with mothers, with fathers, with grandparents, with community groups. I've done enough justice fighting and advocating legally, lawfully, safely, and appropriate over the past decade to know that things get missed. And again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an expert, but yes, I have to say, if anyone reaches out and wants to connect in a way where we might publicly talk about, share story, I don't want to take evidence into possession. I'll want to see some things so that I know that I'm not communicating anything improperly. But no, I'm not looking to have documents transferred to me in any way. I don't want to possess it. We might jump on a Zoom and have you share some things on your screen so I can see them. I want to be responsible. I don't have to be an attorney and be media to be credible and to hold my credibility, because I will say, regardless of the fact that others have had more money and more people and more powers to keep my children away from me, the thing that I have not lost is credibility. And they can continue to scream false allegations and alienation and all kinds of things as much as they want to. And at the end of the day, the moment someone puts that in a lawsuit, even defamation, the moment they put that in a lawsuit or a criminal charge, what do I get to do? I get to provide my proof. And so I know that testimony under oath in court is evidence. That's not me not saying, or that's not me saying I don't believe the outcries of a child or a parent, a mother or a father. I'm just saying it now so that it's clear as people are starting to reach out. If I have questions, it's not because I don't believe you. It's because I just want to make sure that I don't wind up in situations I've wound up before, where once details come out, I'm thinking probably wouldn't have chosen to put myself at risk and take the steps that I did to the extent that I did. I'm just saying I'm aware that there's a lot of that comes from both sides of any spectrum and any justice fight. I'm well aware. I know how to look for that stuff, and I just want to do my due diligence. I want to be responsible. Again, legal, lawful, safe, appropriate. So with that, I got a lot going on today, and it's more personally related that unfortunately has arisen out of all of the court stuff that raged on throughout the summer, and her being returned to get immediately sick and escalated into a really bad place where she's got a narrowing airway. And even just me continuing to fight truthfully, legally, lawfully, safely, and appropriately, it felt like pointlessly, although I know it's not. That has caused some other personal dynamics that I have to address today that are going to be exhausting. Again, for my son, I've got some things over the next couple of days that I need to address. And also in this week, I've got some things I need to address for my daughter, right? We've got a hearing coming up January 29th, but that is not by any means the first and or the last thing I have to do before then. And so if you are in any way, shape, form, or fashion open to saying, you know what, I personally have it, it's not a difficult decision, yep, I can help with $100, $200, or I will raise it. I can ask 5 people for $20. Whatever the goal is that you need to accomplish, Marlena, I'm there with you, because you obviously got a lot going on where you can't do that yourself. Please reach out to me. Of course, I do have 2 Facebook profiles. You all know the Marlena Christopher and then the Marlena Yvette Christopher. I am now cross-posting where I tag one account or the other, so you know which one is me. Any other account is not me, so please do not comment with anyone else. At this point, I'm asking people not to necessarily reach out to my son that was, yes, in communication with many of you while I was in jail, just because I want him to be able to live his life, right? This is not his cross to bear. He's been very loving to me, to my daughter, to our family dynamic and dealing with these injustices. Yes, the GoFundMe, where funds are going to him, he still makes sure that we get those. But I'm just asking that the load not be on him. That was a big part of why I, under duress, and one of the judges there in Oklahoma even called it out, signed for the extradition to get the show on the road, so at least I can bond out and get out to handle my own dynamics as a mom, as a citizen, as someone that still has to pay bills just like everybody else. And so you can send me a message to those. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can send me a message to Instagram. And of course, obviously, if you know me personally and you have phone numbers, emails, any other forms of communication to reach out to me, please do that as well. So with that, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me on a Sunday afternoon, or if you're listening to the replay, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I never take for granted that anyone is giving any attention for non-nefarious purposes. Of course, I have stalkers. Of course, I know the opposing side. Don't really know how they get much of anything else done because they know everything that's happening with me on social media. Goodness, they've mentioned stuff I've forgotten is even out there, but apparently it's an obsession of theirs, and so fine, whatever. Not doing anything wrong. So that said, for those of you that definitely, you're taking the time to listen and care that I have anything to say, I do actually appreciate it. I don't feel entitled to people to listen to me or to support me, but I do absolutely appreciate it. So with that, you all be encouraged, continue to keep fighting. I've seen, let's see, you're a treasure trove of information and inspiration. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I think it's Soul Steading, perhaps. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Glad to do whatever I can in any way. I've seen people waving. And again, I have seen that you all are on Instagram and Facebook. And so thanks for joining me today. I wish you all a self-care Sunday, a spiritual Sunday, a silly Sunday, whatever you need it to be Sunday. And definitely look forward to community chat number 4. I'm going to try to get some consistency of the times of day on these, but for right now, thanks for joining, for sharing, liking, commenting, subscribing to the YouTube channel. Love y'all, appreciate y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye.